What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Hell Month 2025, and I need to preface, if you want to be part of the Mystery Mob or the Midnight Mafia, hit that join button and ride with us all through October. Tonight's story is a fan favorite. It's Jason Part 2. And at the end, I'll link to the original episode, which YouTube has suddenly pushed like crazy, like no other video ever. So it would mean the absolute world to me, guys, if you share this episode and then either watch or share the original Jason episode after this. It'll be on the end screens and it'll be linked below in the comments. And just to let all of you know, if this video gets up to 100 likes in the first 2 days, that's important, in the first 2 days, because I need time to make it, then I will do 3 stories that week. So for every story, if you get them up above 100 likes, you will not get 8 stories for Hell Month. You will get 12. The ball is in your hands. Thank you guys, I love you, and without any further ado, as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. Like I said, this is Jason Part 2, and tonight, we're going hunting for the real monsters that created a legend. So here's what you need to understand. When Friday the 13th hit theaters, May 9th, 1980, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. Writers and directors are like sponges. They absorb everything, whether it's newspaper headlines, whispered stories, and things that keep communities awake at night. And in the late 1970s, there were plenty of those things. Most people think Jason Voorhees was the killer from the beginning. But in the original film, Jason wasn't doing the killing at all. It was his mother, Pamela Voorhees, getting revenge for her son's death. Jason was just a memory, a ghost story. But that ghost story had to come from somewhere. Between 1960 and 1979, there was this pattern emerging across America. Families would go camping. Kids would head off to summer camp. People would disappear in the woods for what should have just been innocent activities, and they would never come back. And the strangest part is, these cases weren't connected. Different states, different years, different killers, but they all had that same feeling. Something was hunting in America's wilderness. Something that understood camps and lakes and the sound that canvas makes when you unzip a tent in the middle of the night. Now, I told you about Lake Bodom 2 years ago. 4 teenagers camping by Finnish Lake when someone unleashed absolute hell. 3 died, 1 survived, but couldn't remember what happened. But Lake Bodom was actually just the beginning. America had its own versions of that nightmare. Multiple versions. So imagine being in 1977, right? The time where a lot of us wish we were alive. But this time we're in Camp Scott, Oklahoma. A Girl Scout camp where 140 girls arrived for the adventure of a lifetime. That first night, 3 little girls, Lori Farmer, who was 8 years old, Michelle Goose, who was 9, and Denise Milner, who was 10, were assigned to tent number 8. It was isolated, 150 yards from the counselors' tents. So the girls, they went to bed excited, whispering about all the fun they were about to have. They fell asleep to crickets and distant laughter. But the sad thing is, they never woke up. Someone or something walked into that camp in the dark hours before dawn. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. He moved silently between tents, past sleeping children, until he found tent number 8. And what happened next was so brutal, so methodical, that investigators couldn't understand how it was done so quietly. How someone could murder 3 children just yards away from dozens of others without making a single sound. But here's the part that should make your skin crawl. This wasn't random. Everything suggested planning. Someone had studied the layout, the routines, the exact location where he could do maximum damage with minimal risk. Does that sound familiar? Because that's exactly the methodical, patient stalking that would become Jason Voorhees' signature. And let's not forget Labor Day weekend 1974, the Cowden family. Richard, 28, his wife Belinda, who was 22, and 5-year-old David and baby Melissa. They decided a last-minute camp to Oregon's Siskiyou Mountains. It wasn't even supposed to be a camping trip. I mean, Richard's truck broke down, so instead of hauling gravel, they headed for the mountains. And on September 1st, Richard and David walked to the Copper General Store to buy milk. The owner literally watched them leave at 9:15 a.m. on foot. And 1 minute later, by 9:16 a.m., the Cowden family had vanished from the face of the earth. And when Belinda's mother went looking for them that evening, she found a campsite that looked like a family had stepped away just for a few minutes. The milk sat half full on the picnic table. Belinda's purse was right there. Keys in plain sight. All camping gear exactly where they had left it. The only thing that was missing was the entire family along with their bathing suits. And think of this, for 7 whole months, nobody found a trace. One of Oregon's largest national efforts of search anywhere. State police, National Guard, hundreds of volunteers. They combed 25 miles of wilderness, 25 miles. Helicopters with infrared cameras, tracking dogs, over 150 interviews. And nothing. And then in April 1975, 2 gold prospectors stumbled across something that made them wish they'd never gone treasure hunting to begin with. Richard's body was tied to a tree, shot, execution style. Belinda, David, and baby Melissa were in a shallow cave nearby, covered with these rocks, bound and shot. The baby died from blunt force trauma. But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. Whoever did this transported the family 7 miles from this campsite to this remote location. Either forced them to walk at gunpoint through this rough terrain or move them else somehow. It suggested planning, preparation, someone who knew these woods well enough to hide 4 bodies for 7 months. And if you're wondering, the only suspect was Dwayne Lee Little, a convicted killer paroled 3 months before that disappearance. Little was in that area that weekend as well, but they never found enough evidence to charge him, so he could be innocent. But to this day, nobody knows why someone would target a random family on a spontaneous camping trip. No robbery, no valuables left behind, no connection between the victims and the killer. Just a family who encountered something monstrous in the woods. Now here's where things get interesting. Camp Scott happened in 1977 and made national news. 3 girls murdered at the summer camp, killer never caught. And it was still being investigated when Friday the 13th went into production in 1979. And the Cowden case haunted the Pacific Northwest for years. Unsolved family murders became local legend, whispered around Hollywood parties when writers needed ideas. But what if I told you that these real cases that might have inspired Jason, well, that's only half the story. The other half is what happened after 1980, after Jason became a household name. This right here, people, is where our story takes a dark turn. The creators of Friday the 13th thought they were making entertainment, a scary movie to give audience a fright and send them safely home afterwards. And a lot of people thought it was a rip-off version of Mike Myers' Halloween. But these creators at the time had no idea that they were creating a blueprint. I mean, what happens when fiction becomes a roadmap to reality? When people don't just watch Jason Voorhees, they decide, to become him. The line between entertainment and deadly reality is about to disappear completely. Not far from where I grew up, October 24th, 1988, the year I was born, in Massachusetts, Greenfield. A small town where people left their doors unlocked and kids rode bikes until dark. I know I did. Mark Branch was 22 years old. He worked at a grocery store and spent his free time at Video Expo 1. The staff knew him too well. Mark, didn't rent comedies or action movies according to the employees. Mark rented strictly gore, period. The gorier, the better. And he had this particular obsession with Jason Voorhees. Multiple copies of every Friday the 13th film. He'd study them frame by frame, taking notes, learning techniques, memorizing methods. Now, should people at the expo remembered this, seen it, and maybe let police know? Maybe. But that October night, Mark put on black boots, he grabbed a hockey mask, and he walked to Sharon Gregory's apartment, a young woman that he barely knew. And when police found Sharon's body the next morning, they could barely process the scene. Stabbed repeatedly in the head, chest, abdomen. Methodical, savage, exactly like a Friday the 13th film. And Mark Branch had vanished. Police searched his apartment and found a veritable monument to horror. 75 slasher films, 64 books about killers, 3 knives, a machete, and goalie masks. 3 of them, to be precise. One investigator, in fact, said it perfectly, quote, "Branch thinks he's Jason." And this manhunt, I'd tell you, was massive. As Halloween approached, Greenfield was paralyzed. They canceled Halloween parades. The theaters even postponed the movie Halloween 4, afraid that it might inspire more violence. For weeks, you gotta realize everybody in that town thought that every shadow could be Mark Branch. Every hockey mask could be the last thing they saw as a victim. But Mark wasn't the only one who got the wrong message from Jason. September 5th, 2004, Daniel Gonzalez, who was 24 years old and unemployed, living with his mother in Surrey, England. Days spent, gaming and watching horror movies. His favorites were A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. Gonzalez had actually been in a psychiatric treatment facility for years. His mother literally wrote to Parliament begging for mental health help. Her letter asked a tragically prophetic question. Does my son have to commit murder to get help? Well, that answer apparently was yes. Because that September morning, Gonzalez packed a kitchen knife, put on a white hockey mask, Jason's mask, and took the train to Portsmouth. He was on a mission to kill as many people as possible. His first victim was 73-year-old Marie Harding. Walking home alone, Gonzalez jumped from the bushes wearing his Jason mask, and he stabbed her in the back, and then he slit her throat. As she bled to death, he rifled through her purse for 20 pounds. But unfortunately, he wasn't done. Over 2 days, Gonzalez killed 3 more people, and he seriously wounded 2 others, each attack more brutal than the last. And he actually had a diary. And in his diary, Gonzalez wrote,
"I will be a serial killer. I got that old woman proper, bloodbath, pouring out of her throat. I gotta say this, it felt really, really good. One of the best things that I've done in my life."
And when police actually caught Gonzalez, he said he wanted to become famous like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. He had studied their movie techniques and adapted them for real life. The hockey mask wasn't just a disguise, it was a transformation. When he put it on, he became the monster that he got to watch all those times on the screen. Peter Moore, a Welsh serial killer, blamed murders on a fictional lover named Jason. Dozens of copycat cases using Jason's image, methods, and mask for real crimes. So what started as entertainment, guys, became a how-to guide. But here is what's going to keep you awake tonight. Everything I've told you assumes that we found the real source. But what if we haven't? Remember the Cowden family? Well, I've already done a full deep dive on that case. And when you hear all the details, the methodical way that they were taken, the remote location, the fact that the killer was never caught, It feels less like a random crime and more like something else. The Cowden murders happened 6 years before Friday the 13th came out. But everything about that case, the isolated campsite, the family targeted at random, killer moving like a ghost through a familiar territory, reads like a Jason Voorhees script. So here is my haunting question. What if the Cowden case wasn't just potential inspiration? What if it was the inspiration? What if somewhere in Hollywood a screenwriter heard about the unsolved family murder and thought, this is the story that needs telling? Not as a true crime documentary, but as a horror movie. Not as a memorial to the real victims, but as entertainment to scare audiences. But maybe that's not even the most disturbing part. Maybe it's what happened after Jason became famous. How the character born from real tragedy inspired a lot of new tragedy. How the victims of Cowden and Camp Scott became, in some twisted way, the grandparents of every person hurt by a Jason copycat. Remember that real monsters inspired a fictional monster. Then that fictional monster inspired new real monsters. An endless cycle of violence and entertainment, tragedy and profit. And the cycle's not over, guys. Not even close. Every time somebody puts on a hockey mask to commit crime, fiction becomes reality blueprint again. The line between real and entertainment doesn't blur. It completely disappears. So the next time you watch Friday the 13th, remember tonight, remember that behind every fictional monster might be real monsters, real victims, real families who never came home from camping trips. And remember that somewhere, someone might be watching that exact same movie, but they're not looking for entertainment, they're looking for inspiration. And just in case none of those cases were the actual inspiration, just in case there's something darker that we haven't uncovered, like I said, I've already done a full Cowden deep dive and a full Girl Scout deep dive. And if you want the complete story, every disturbing detail, every unanswered question, well, those videos will be right here and right here, or right here and right here. Because some stories are too important to leave untold, even when they're too terrible to forget. Thank you guys so much for watching the first episode of Hell Month. And remember, the original Jason up here, please go watch that and share it, because for some reason the algorithm is deciding to bless us. So thank you guys, I love you, and I'll see you on Monday for episode 2. Cheers.